Hello, bonjour, Alberta. Did you know that at least 238,000 people speak Français in Alberta? And those numbers just keep on growing? Oui, oui, c'est vrai, it's true. And thanks to Shaw TV Community Access Programming, we get to reach out to everyone to let you know all about special people, places, events, and activities happening right here in this great province, in both English and en français. That's right, mes amis. We begin the first part of our program in English, and then we repeat it en français. So stay with us. Restez à l'écoute.
Welcome and bienvenue to Hello, Bonjour, Alberta. I'm Marc Lalonde.
And I'm Anne Boiteau.
And in this episode, we have two very interesting guests for you. We have Patti O'Connor, Director on the board of the Canadian War Museums Foundation. Military Museums Foundation. Pardon me. Thank you, Patti. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we have retired Major General Barry Ashton, who is the founding president of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry Foundation. Welcome to you.
Thank you.
So Patti, let's start with you. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Vancouver, and my dad was in the oil and gas business, so we were in Saskatchewan and Texas, and ended up in Calgary, where I guess I was probably about 8 years old by the time we moved here and stayed here.
So you studied here in Alberta, you're a Calgarian,
I am,
Calgary.
Yes.
And do you have brothers and sisters? How big was your family?
I have 4 younger brothers, and fortunately I was first because I was the shortest. My shortest brother is 6'2". So I actually worked very well for me. My dad explained to me that being the only girl, I had my own room, my own clothes, and didn't have to share. So I did work that a little bit. Dad and I were very close.
I think your brothers are probably even happier about the fact you didn't have to share.
I think they probably still are. Yeah.
And you studied here, university?
I did. I attended University of Calgary, majored in fine arts, piano, and went on to join Air Canada in 1972, retired in 2009, 37 years as a flight attendant, a stewardess, flight attendant, and have been retired since, and very active with a few boards.
Yes, and how did you get involved with the Military Museum Foundation?
Well, I've always had an interest because my dad was in the RAF. There were 2 Canadian squadrons in the RCAF, so they became part of the RAF during World War II. And Dad had always shared a little bit of his history. They didn't really, they weren't sharing a lot of those stories because they didn't like to talk about it. But when I was invited to sit on the board of Valor Canada, I was on that board for 2 years and met some wonderful people, and that board had actually been instrumental in building the military museums. So
it wasn't easy.
I retired from that board in November 2014 and joined the board of the Military Museums Foundation. The education programs were what?
Well, I've seen your resume, Patti, and I'm sure we could talk about it for a few hours.
Yes.
But we need to move on. So, retired Major General Barry, where were you originally from?
Well, that's a long story because I was born in England. My dad was a Canadian soldier and my mother was a war bride. And I came to Canada with my mother, who was pregnant with my younger brother in November of 1944. We moved to my grandparents' home in southern Saskatchewan. And when my dad came home at the end of the war, there was no jobs, no work there, so we eventually moved to Edmonton, and he was working building the Imperial Oil Refinery in Edmonton. So all of my formative years were spent in Edmonton from 1947 until 1963 when I joined the regular army.
Okay.
And that's where you learned French too, in Edmonton?
I say that's correct. I learned French in high school in École Secondaire in Edmonton, yes.
Yeah. And you're married?
I am. My lovely wife Carol is a native of Montreal, and we have two fine children, a daughter Susan who lives here in Calgary, and a son Philip who teaches urban planning at the University of Illinois in Chicago.
And your military career then, I mean that's quite a long time between then and when you recently, I suppose, retired. Postings all over the world?
I did. I was very fortunate. I had, in 35 years of service, I had 2 years in the reserves before I joined the regular force. So I started in 1961 in the reserves, in 1963 in the regular force. Did my training in Montreal and eventually at Collège Militaire Royal de Saint-Jean in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, south of Montreal. And had started off as a combat engineer, but when I was commissioned as an officer, I didn't have an engineering degree, so they asked me what I wanted to do, and eventually I ended up in the infantry.
Oh, okay. So can you give us a quick list of different places?
Well, I started off after I finished my training, my officer training in Montreal and then Borden, Ontario. I came here to Calgary, and then I went from Calgary, I went to Ottawa. From Ottawa back to Calgary, from Ottawa back to Victoria, British Columbia, and then to Kingston, Ontario, and then back to Calgary, and on it went. So I served over a course of 35 years. I served in every region of Canada, including New Brunswick and the Maritimes. I've served overseas on 4 tours in Cyprus with the United Nations peacekeeping forces on the island of Cyprus. I was there as a lieutenant, as a captain, as a major, and as a lieutenant colonel between 1967 and 1983. And I served, my final tour in the UN was with the forces in the former Yugoslavia. I was a deputy force commander of 57,000 UN troops in the former Yugoslavia in 1995-96. And in 1996 I took my retirement. But before that, I had also served at NATO headquarters in Brussels, and also I went to school in London, England for a year.
Okay, so here we've got somebody that knows what he's talking about, about more recent military history, for sure. Let's talk about your organizations. If you're the Military Museums Foundation, first of all, Patti. How long has that been around? What's it about? What
as I shared with you, they built the military museums, and I think that was about 1984.
1991.
1991.
It was opened by the Queen, yes.
Okay. Okay. And the board that I serve on has actually been a working board since November 2014. So it's very new, and we're becoming very active within the community. And we have some really amazing programs, so a lot of
educational programs.
Well, they are educational programs. So we had close to 18,000 students through the museums last year.
Wow,
and
that's amazing.
What we're doing is we're raising money to fund these programs. It's very, very important. Canadian military history.
Yes.
And the teachers love it because they'll spend 2 hours in the museum, and they have shared with us that it's worth 2-3 weeks in the classroom.
No doubt.
Yes.
No doubt.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're also director of special events for the foundation.
On the board, that's my position. I'm director responsible for special events.
Okay, so we'll be talking about one that you're doing jointly in just a moment. Let's talk about the PPCLI's foundation. How long has that been around, and what does it do?
It was created in 2010 as a foundation, one of the 3 arms of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry, the serving component, an association made up of retired people who have retired Patricias. And then they wanted a group that we were looking forward to the 100th anniversary of the PPCLI, which was in 2014. And wanted a capacity to go out and reach out into the community to engage a broader section of the community, to raise some funds to support some of the activities of the 100th anniversary, such as one of the ones that's related to what we're talking about here today is the youth education program that we did in 2015, the 100th anniversary of the Battle of Friesenberg, which is the first big battle that the PPCLI fought in World War I.
And you were saying the PPCLI was the last regiment raised privately
funded.
That's
in the
correct.
British Empire.
That's correct. In 1914, when the war broke out, a Montreal businessman by the name of Andrew Hamilton Galt offered to the Canadian government $100,000 to raise and equip a regiment to be veterans, to be the very first in the line in France. And eventually his offer was accepted, and the regiment took on the name of Princess Patricia, who was at the time the daughter of the Duke of Connaught, who was Canada's Governor General.
Yeah, so that's a big piece of Canadian history.
It is.
Yes.
It
How
is.
big was that regiment?
In 1914, an infantry battalion was about almost 1,100, 1,088 people, yeah, soldiers.
I'll put
Quite a
that
few
together,
people.
yes. And if we read the history of the First World War, PPCLI is in there all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we were the first in the field in World War I, and we were the first in the field in World War II, and in
That sort
Korea.
of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about the event
Yes.
that you're putting together jointly. Do you often work together?
This is a first, but it won't be the last from what I'm sensing. So it's September 24th at the military museums, and we are selling tickets for $250 a ticket, limited to 120 tickets, and we have some sponsorships that we're working on.
And what is the event?
It's the commemoration of the Battle of the Somme.
This year is the 100th
100th
anniversary of the Battle of the
Yeah.
Somme. Started on the 1st of July, 1916, and ended on the 18th of November. And over the course of that 4 or 5 month period, nearly more than 1 million soldiers lost their lives on both sides.
In
during
that one
war,
battle.
In that one battle.
Yeah.
One continuous.
On the first day, on the 1st of July, 1916, the Newfoundland Regiment, which was under British control in those days, was wiped out, and the British suffered nearly 60,000 casualties.
And Newfoundland was a separate country back then.
It was
Yes.
a colony of the British.
Of the British, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was, but that was the style of war back then to some degree, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was
a lot of people
trench
died all
warfare.
at once.
Trench warfare.
A lot of infantry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And what will you be doing at the museum on that special day?
What's the event?
Well, we have, we'll be having a reception, holding a reception in what we call Cooper Key Hall, and that was developed through the generous donation of Gerald Cooper Key. And we have Victor Duboyka's incredible collection of World War I artifacts, and Victor will be speaking. He will be our key speaker, and sharing the stories of the different people that wore the uniforms. He has Lord Byng's clock. He has Sam Steele's hat with a picture of Sam Steele, but Victor knows the story of the body that went into every uniform in that collection. And he's just an amazing storyteller. He's actually put a book together.
So that'll be a very
It'll be a
memorable
very good,
experience
yeah,
to be there, for
terrific,
sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Must take quite a long time to put an event like that together.
Well,
I imagine,
the
or
whole process
many hours.
has been it's been quite a challenge. I have 2 children, Sarah Jane and RJ, and they don't see, if they want to see me, they find me in Cooper Key Hall. My husband Larry is pretty close to doing the same thing, and actually I've conscripted him to be on my committee. So
I see. So it's a family affair too.
it's become a
and
family
all of that
affair,
sort of
and
thing.
Sarah Jane and her husband Phil live in Idaho, but they've
come down to
they've
help?
deigned to come and join us for this dinner. So I'm really pleased. They're very supportive.
And it is going to be a dinner.
It will be a dinner, a formal dinner, a field mess dinner, and we'll be doing the reception, the cocktail reception, VIP reception in Cooper Key Hall, and then moving into the Naval Museum for the sit-down dinner.
All right. Well, hopefully
Tickets online?
people will be able
Yes.
to attend that. Thank you very much for being here, Patti O'Connor and retired Major General Barry Ashton, and thank you for being with us. Stay with us. On continue en français.